My husband and his friends thought it'd be funny to leave me stranded in small town in Italy after a fight. Let's see how she gets back. They laughed, driving off. I didn't return. A month later, he traced me down in Greece, and what happened next was shocking a moment. To thank each of you for being part of this journey. If you're drawn to stories of women who find strength in unexpected places after betrayal, consider subscribing. It's completely free and helps support more stories of resilience and rebirth. Now let's witness how one abandoned woman turned an act of cruelty into the beginning of her freedom. I never imagined our anniversary trip would end with me sitting alone on a cold stone bench in a foreign town, clutching nothing but my tote bag and a half-eaten granola bar. We were supposed to be celebrating 10 years of marriage. Instead, we spent most of the trip bickering about the hotel, the food, the way I asked too many questions, the way he ignored me in front of his friends. Gabriel always had a short fuse, but I thought we'd just hit another rough patch. That morning, in a sleepy little town on the edge of Tuscany, it all exploded. The argument started in the piazza. I said I didn't like how he joked about me with his friends. He rolled his eyes and called me too sensitive. I snapped back, loudly. I remember an old man sitting nearby shaking his head as we yelled. A pigeon flew between us, almost theatrically. And then without a word, Gabriel turned around, walked to the rental car, and got in. I thought he was bluffing. I thought he'd drive around the block and cool off. I even waved sarcastically as the engine started. But he didn't come back. Not after 5 minutes. Not after 20. And it wasn't just him. He took everything. My suitcase, my phone, my passport, even my wallet, which he said he grabbed by accident. Right. I sat there in disbelief, the reality sinking in slowly like water in a sinking boat. I had no money, no identification, no working phone. I'd left mine charging in the car. No idea where I was, except that the signs were in Italian and the nearest train station was probably an hour away. I couldn't even ask for help. I didn't speak the language beyond ciao and gelato. At first, I was too proud to panic. I convinced myself he'd come back by nightfall, that he just needed space. But the sun dipped behind the hills, and the tiny town grew quiet. Shops closed, lights dimmed, and I was still sitting there, waiting. Humiliation crept in first, like ants crawling up my spine. Then fear. What if he never came back? What if this was it? I walked to the one cafe still open, but when I tried to explain, the teenage waiter just shrugged. I think he thought I was a lost tourist. Maybe I was. I asked for Wi-Fi. He shook his head. I offered the only thing I had, my wedding ring. He laughed. I left. I wandered until I found a bench under a crumbling archway. It looked safe enough. My stomach growled, but I was too numb to feel hunger. I wrapped my scarf tighter and curled up on the bench. The night air was colder than I expected. I closed my eyes and tried not to cry. And that's when I heard them. Voices, male, slurred, laughing. I peeked through my lashes and saw 3 men stumbling out of a nearby bar. They were loud, drunk, and walking right toward me. Bella notte, no? One of them said, his voice thick with alcohol and amusement. I didn't answer. He came closer. Americana? He gestured to my hair, my jeans, my helplessness. I could feel his eyes sliding over me. Leave me alone, I said, my voice hoarse but steady. They didn't. One of them sat on the other side of the bench. The other 2 flanked me. I stood up quickly, but they followed, laughing, mocking. One reached for my arm, and I panicked. My legs moved on instinct, stumbling into the street, away from the bench, away from the safety I no longer had. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know if I was screaming or just breathing too loud. All I knew was that I had never felt so alone, or so scared. And just when I thought I'd reached the edge of my luck, a sharp, unfamiliar voice cut through the night. It wasn't English. It wasn't Italian. It was something else, and it made the men stop in their tracks. One of the men reached for me again, his fingers cold, clumsy, and insistent. I tried to twist away, but his grip tightened. I was seconds from screaming, not that I knew if anyone would even come, when suddenly a voice rang out like a crack of thunder, harsh, loud, commanding. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the tone, and so did the men. They froze. The one holding me let go as if my arm had burned him. They all turned to face the source of the sound. A man stood at the edge of the alley, stocky, weathered, gray hair under a faded cap. His eyes burned with something fierce and protective. He barked again, this time clearer. Still not Italian, not English. Greek, I realized. He shouted one more time and stepped forward, holding up something shiny. A metal walking stick? Or was it a tool? Whatever it was, the drunk men weren't interested in finding out. They cursed in Italian, backed off, and disappeared into the dark, laughing nervously like cowards. I stood frozen, heart hammering in my chest. I didn't know if I was safe or just in different danger now. The man approached slowly and spoke again, gently this time. He looked concerned, pointing to my scraped hands and disheveled hair. I must have looked like a ghost. I stammered. He waved a hand. English, he said, his accent thick but clear. You, alone? I nodded. He frowned, then gestured for me to follow. Every instinct told me not to, but every instinct was also screaming that I couldn't survive another night on that bench. So I followed him. We walked several blocks in silence, the cobblestones hard beneath my aching feet. Eventually, we reached a beat-up pickup truck parked near a dark, sleepy cafe. Inside sat a woman, older, sharp-eyed, with a braid down her back and a permanent frown etched into her face. She looked me over like a shopkeeper inspecting bruised produce. She said something to him in Greek, fast and clipped. He answered just as quickly. They argued. Or maybe they just talked like that. Then the woman turned to me and said, in heavy English, "Name?" "Alexis," I whispered. She grunted. "You come, sleep, but no lies, no drama." And just like that, I was in the back of their truck, winding through pitch-black hills, not knowing if I was heading towards safety or something far worse. I must have fallen asleep somewhere along the way, because the next thing I remember was waking up to sunlight and the sound of animals, bleating, clucking, mooing. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. The window near my bed was open, a breeze carrying the scent of herbs, fresh bread, and olives. The room was small, stone walls, worn quilt, a pitcher of water beside the bed. I sat up and winced. Every muscle in my body hurt. Then I heard footsteps. The woman, Elena, I'd later learn, appeared in the doorway holding a bundle of folded clothes. She tossed them on the edge of the bed without ceremony. "Farm clothes," she said, nodding toward them. "Too big, but they work." I blinked, confused. I thought I could rest." She narrowed her eyes. "You rest last night. You eat our food, sleep in our bed." She stepped closer. "If you stay, you work." She didn't wait for my answer, just turned and disappeared into the hallway. I sat there in silence, staring at the worn overalls and the dusty boots beside them. I didn't know what I'd gotten myself into. But for the first time since Gabriel left, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I had somewhere to be. If anyone had told me a month ago that I'd be up at dawn, shoveling goat droppings, while wearing pants 2 sizes too big and boots that reeked of manure, I would have laughed. But there I was, covered in sweat, mud, and goat hair, every muscle in my body screaming, every nail broken, and Elena, watching me from across the yard like a hawk, who didn't quite trust the new chick in the nest. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. Her silence was sharp enough. The first morning I nearly fainted picking olives. The nets were heavy, the sun unforgiving, and my city-soft hands weren't made for gripping ladders or hauling crates. Nikos was patient, Elena was not. She muttered things under her breath, in Greek, but I didn't need a translator to know they weren't compliments. "You want food?" she barked once. "Work faster." By the third day, I began to think this was punishment, not charity. I had offered to leave, twice. Both times, Nikos just shook his head and said, "Where you go? No phone, no ID, you not ready." He was right. As much as I hated to admit it, I had nowhere, no one. Gabriel had vanished into whatever life he was building without me. My friends had stopped answering when I borrowed Elena's old phone to call. My bank account was frozen, joint and locked down without my access. I was stranded. So I kept scrubbing, kept hauling, kept bleeding from blisters I didn't even know I had. At night, I cried quietly on the thin mattress, aching for a hot shower, for silence, for something that felt like me. And then, on the 5th day, something happened. I was out by the olive trees, again, trying to shake loose the stubborn fruit, with a long pole that weighed as much as a shovel. My arms trembled with every swing. A small voice startled me. "You help trees?" it said. I turned to see a little girl, maybe 7, with dark curls and curious eyes. She held out a tiny olive branch, freshly broken. "You help trees," she repeated, placing the branch in my dirt-covered hands. "Trees help you." Before I could respond, she giggled and ran off toward the hills. I stood there in the shade of those ancient trees, clutching that little branch like it was sacred. It was the first time I'd felt noticed, like I wasn't just a burden. That afternoon, the air smelled sweeter. The work felt a little less cruel. My arms still ached, but I didn't resent the ache. I earned it. I started asking Nikos questions, in broken English and exaggerated hand gestures, about the olives, the soil, the seasons. He grinned. He loved to teach. Elena stayed quiet, but I caught her watching me more than once, less like I was a stray dog and more like a puzzle she hadn't solved yet. That night, I volunteered to feed the animals before bed. The barn was quiet. The only sounds were the soft snorts of pigs and the rustling of hay. I moved slowly, brushing dirt from my clothes, when I spotted something tucked behind an old stack of crates. A chest, wooden, worn, padlocked, nothing unusual, except for the name carved into it. Alexis, my name, my exact name. I blinked, thinking maybe I was delirious. I moved closer, ran my fingers over the lettering. It was rough, hand-carved, and not recent. The lock was rusted but loose. I tugged at it, and it snapped open with a crack. Inside was a faded envelope, yellowed, fragile. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a letter, one that began with the words, "If you're reading this, then you were meant to be here." The paper was delicate, folded with care, ink smudged in a few places like it had once caught tears. I shouldn't have read it. It wasn't mine. But something about finding my name carved into that chest made me feel like I was meant to. The letter was written in neat, looping English, the kind learned from textbooks, not growing up with it. The signature at the end was Elena. "To my sweet Sophia, I don't know where you are, or if you'll ever come back, but I want you to know I understand. I know what it's like to love someone who breaks you in places no one can see. If you're reading this, it means you found your way back to something real. To the land, to yourself. I forgive you, and I'll always keep a space for you." I read it 3 times. Sophia, Elena's daughter. She'd run too, like me, from a man who controlled, manipulated, maybe worse. And now she was gone. The letter never said where or what happened to her, only that she was missed and forgiven. I felt something crack open inside me. Suddenly, Elena's coldness made sense. She didn't see me. She saw the ghost of her own daughter. Another broken woman dropped at her doorstep, another potential disappearance. I sat there in the dark of the barn, the smell of hay and soil thick in the air, and cried harder than I had since the night Gabriel left. But for the first time, the tears weren't just for me. They were for Sophia, for Elena, and for all the women who were told to stay quiet, stay loyal, stay small. The next morning, I didn't wait for Elena to bark orders. I was up before the sun, already pulling on my boots. When she saw me harvesting olives without being told, she raised one eyebrow but said nothing. By week's end, I was pruning trees beside Nikos, mimicking his movements, asking questions with clumsy Italian and wild hand gestures. He grinned like a proud grandfather, even taught me how to spot when an olive was too proud to fall. I wasn't sure if it was metaphor or just Greek humor, but it stuck with me. I learned to knead bread with Elena, our silence gradually softening. She corrected my posture with a nudge of her elbow, not a sigh of exasperation. One night, as I struggled to grind olives by hand, she handed me a small cloth and said, "Sophia used to cry over this too. You are stronger than her." I didn't know if that was a compliment or a confession. Maybe both. I learned to love the aches in my body. They reminded me I was doing something. I no longer flinched when dirt crusted under my nails. I spoke more Greek and Italian with each passing day. I found joy in the stillness between chores, watching the sky change color behind the olive groves. The quiet stopped feeling lonely. I stopped feeling like a ghost of the woman Gabriel left behind. And just when I began to believe I could truly stay here, start fresh, I checked the old dented laptop Elena let me use once a week. There it was, an email from Gabriel. Subject, "I'm coming to find you." I stared at the words, 5 of them, and everything inside me went still. The subject line alone made my stomach twist. "I'm coming to find you." I stared at it for a full minute, hands frozen above the keyboard. The room felt smaller, colder, as if Gabriel's presence had slipped through the screen. I clicked. "Alexis, I've made a terrible mistake. I don't even know where to begin. Not a day has passed that I haven't regretted leaving you. I was angry, hurt, and I did something unforgivable. But I never stopped loving you. I've tried to find you. When I heard you were still in Italy, my heart nearly stopped. Please, let me come. Let me explain. We can fix this. Love always, Gabriel." He signed it, "Love always," like nothing had changed. Like he hadn't left me on a bench in a foreign town with no money, no ID, and no way home. But the worst part? A tiny, trembling part of me wanted to believe him. I remembered our mornings, laughing over coffee tangled in bedsheets. The way he used to tuck hair behind my ear like he was memorizing my face. I remembered the man who once held me like I was fragile and precious. And I remembered the man who weaponized silence, who twisted apologies into obligations, who made me feel small when I stood too tall. I didn't answer. I told no one. But the next day I was distracted. I dropped a basket of olives, forgot to salt the dough. Elena raised an eyebrow. Nikos noticed first. That night, as we sat around the table eating stew, he cleared his throat. "You get news today." I blinked. "What?" "You read something. Email?" I paused, then nodded slowly. "From Gabriel." Elena's spoon froze midair. Nikos leaned forward. "He says what?" "That he's sorry, that he wants to find me, to fix things." Nikos's eyes narrowed. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "Some wolves wear silk." Elena finally spoke. "He left you to die." I opened my mouth, then closed it. "He said he made a mistake," I murmured. Elena snorted. Nikos stood, picked up my empty bowl, and said softly, "Mistake is forgetting bread, not abandoning wife in street." I didn't sleep that night. I kept hearing Gabriel's voice in my head, apologizing, pleading, promising, but also yelling, ignoring, laughing with his friends as I cried in the car. I watched the sky lighten through the small window. By dawn, I'd decided, if he showed up, I'd listen, but on my terms. No tears, no begging, no old dreams, only truth. That morning, I headed to the grove with Elena. We worked in silence, pruning branches and shaking the trees clean. Then I heard it. A voice, clear, familiar, too familiar. "Alexis, are you here?" I froze, pruning shears tight in my hand. The voice echoed again through the grove. "Alexis?" Gabriel had found me. He stepped into the grove like it still belonged to him, like I still did. "Alexis," Gabriel said, smiling like I was a long-lost pet finally found. "There you are." I didn't move. He looked the same. Crisp button-down, perfect posture. The smell of expensive cologne clinging to the air like a second skin. Not a hair out of place. I, on the other hand, was sweaty, sunburned, and clutching a pair of pruning shears with shaking hands. He walked up to me, arms outstretched like I might fall into them. "I've been looking everywhere," he said, his voice soft, wounded. "You have no idea what it's been like. I've been sick over what happened. I was angry that day. So were you. We both said things." I held up a hand. "Stop." He blinked. I thought if I gave you space you'd come back. And when you didn't, I realized—" "You didn't give me space," I snapped. "You abandoned me in a foreign town with no money, no ID, and no way to get help. That wasn't space. That was cruelty." He flinched. For half a second. Then the charming smile returned. "Okay," he said slowly. "You're right. It was horrible. But Alexis," I panicked. I was overwhelmed. I didn't know what else to do. "And what? Your phone stopped working. You couldn't come back 10 minutes later and fix it?" His face twitched. "Can we not do this here? I didn't come to fight. I came to bring you home." He glanced toward the farmhouse, where Elena and Nikos stood stiffly in the doorway. "I owe them a great deal," he said. "Let me make it right." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a thick white envelope. He held it out like a bribe in a mob movie. "For your trouble," he told Nikos in slow English. Nikos didn't take it. "We are not trouble," he said flatly. Elena crossed her arms. "You can keep your money. We are not for sale." Gabriel's smile faltered for a second, before he shrugged and slipped the envelope back into his pocket. Then he turned to me again. "Look, I get it. You needed time. You were angry. But you've made your point. You've lived your little fairy tale out here." "Fairy tale?" I repeated. He looked around. "Come on, Alexis. You're not really going to live out your life on a goat farm, are you? I know you. You need structure. You need comfort. You're not built for this." "I wasn't," I said. "But I am now." Something sharp flickered behind his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said again, voice syrupy. "You're confused. I understand. You've been through a lot, but you're not thinking clearly. You've forgotten who you are." I took a step back. No, I finally remembered who I am. Later, when he stepped inside the house, he wandered as if he owned it. Opened cabinets, touched picture frames. I followed, uneasy. Then he found the folder. The one with the business registration papers. The one where I had signed my name next to Elena's as a co-owner of the new olive oil venture we were building. He picked it up, read the first page, and something in his expression darkened. "What is this?" "Our business," I said. "My new life." He narrowed his eyes. "You used your legal name?" I nodded. "You idiot," he spat, and it wasn't charming anymore. "Do you have any idea what kind of legal hell you've just walked into? That name is tied to our finances, our assets. You're still legally married to me, Alexis." My stomach twisted. "I could sue you for identity fraud, financial misconduct. And if this little operation makes any money," he smirked, "guess who's entitled to half?" I couldn't breathe. He dropped the papers back onto the table like he'd won. Gabriel sat across from me at the kitchen table, his smug confidence filling every corner of the room. His fingers drummed lightly on the folder containing our business papers, as if he already owned it, owned me. You've made some questionable decisions, he said smoothly. But I'm willing to help you clean it up. You can come back with me. I'll fix it. I looked him straight in the eyes. You really think you still have that kind of power over me? His smile faltered just slightly. Alexis, I'm trying to help you. No, I said calmly. You're trying to control me. Again. He leaned forward. You don't understand how this will look to a court. The financial crossover, the use of our joint name. You mean the name you use to open secret accounts? I said evenly. The ones you used to fund vacations without telling me? To pay for your nights out while I tracked grocery coupons like a second job? That shut him up. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. I stood slowly. My heart was pounding, but my voice never wavered. You left me in a foreign country, Gabriel. Alone. With nothing. I didn't just survive. I rebuilt. I learned a new language. I learned how to work with my hands. I found people who didn't need to be impressed to love me, who expected nothing from me but honesty. He looked stunned, like he didn't recognize me anymore. And that's when I knew I'd already won. I don't need you to fix anything, I said. I've already fixed it myself. You're delusional, he hissed. Maybe, but this delusional woman has a lawyer now, and a notary who confirmed that I didn't use your identity. I used mine. My name, my hands, my labor, my life. From the doorway, Elena and Nikos watched silently. Then Elena stepped forward and placed a hand on my shoulder. She is family now, Elena said. And you are a tourist. Outside, 2 neighbors had arrived with baskets of lemons and olives. A quiet gesture, but unmistakable. Support, witnesses, a town standing behind me. Gabriel's face flushed. He stood abruptly. Fine, keep your little farm. I don't need this headache. He stormed off, muttering under his breath in a string of curses I didn't care to understand. He left that afternoon without saying goodbye. I thought I'd feel relief. Instead, I felt clarity. That night, as I cleaned the guest room he'd briefly stayed in, I noticed his suitcase still tucked behind the door. He hadn't bothered to zip it shut in his hurry. Clothes spilled out like regret. I knelt down to fold it closed, and something small rolled across the floor. I picked it up, my wedding ring. It was in a small velvet pouch, tied with a red ribbon. The one he'd proposed with years ago, the one I hadn't seen since the morning he left me. I stared at it for a long time, not because I wanted it back, but because for the first time, I saw it for what it really was. Not a symbol of love, a symbol of ownership, of silence, of everything I'd lost, and now everything I'd gained. I placed the ring on the windowsill, let the moonlight glint off its polished surface. Then I closed the suitcase, zipped it shut, and set it by the door. He could come back for his things, but he would never again come back for me. I walked to the olive tree just after dawn. The same one I sat beneath the first morning I decided not to run. The same one where Nikos once handed me a cup of bitter coffee and said, "If you plant roots, they feed you back." In my palm was the velvet pouch. The ring inside still sparkled like the first time he slipped it on my finger, when I believed love meant giving up pieces of yourself so someone else could feel whole. I crouched at the base of the tree and dug gently at the soil, fingers brushing through the earth like pages of a diary. And then I placed the pouch, and everything it symbolized, deep into the roots. I didn't bury it in anger. I buried it in gratitude, because that ring had once marked the start of a life I thought I wanted, and now, letting it go, marked the life I had finally built. A few hours later, the courtyard buzzed with life. Tables were set, bottles arranged in neat rows with hand-stamped labels. Elia, Greek for olive, the brand name that took months to decide, months more to believe in. Our olive oil had made its first local batch, and Elena insisted we celebrate properly. She looked radiant in her worn linen dress, hair pinned back with the same barrette she wore the first time I saw her. Nikos beamed beside her, offering flutes of local wine to neighbors and travelers passing through. And me? I wore a white dress I'd found at the second-hand market, simple, cotton, breezy. I hadn't worn white since our wedding. This time it didn't mean surrender. It meant rebirth. I still can't believe this is real, I said, brushing olive dust from the bottles. I feel like I'm dreaming. You are, Elena said, handing me a basket of figs, the kind you wake up from stronger. Nikos grinned. And stickier, he added, pointing at the syrup running down my fingers. I laughed, louder than I had in months. Guests arrived one by one, some neighbors, some shopkeepers who sold our first small batches, and even the mayor's wife, who declared our oil the soul of the land. It felt surreal. A woman who'd once cried herself to sleep on a bench now hosting a harvest party. But what surprised me most wasn't the turnout. It was how complete I felt. No ache, no yearning, just peace. I didn't need Gabriel to see this. I didn't need him to understand it, approve it, or regret losing it. Because this wasn't his story anymore. That afternoon, as we packed up the last of the food, a car pulled up along the dirt road. A small rental. Dust-covered and sun-faded. A woman stepped out, mid-30s, designer heels caked in mud, suitcase dragging behind her like a burden too heavy for one life to carry. Her face was blotchy from tears, her eyes desperate. "Excuse me," she said, voice shaking. "I'm sorry to bother you. I got turned around. I just left my husband in Rome. She couldn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I knew that look. The look of someone who just lost everything and had no idea what came next. I looked at Elena. She gave a small, knowing nod. Then I smiled at the woman and stepped forward. "You look like you could use a new beginning," I said softly. She blinked. I took her hand. "Come, you're safe here." As we led her toward the house, I glanced back at the olive tree. The sun was dipping low, bathing everything in gold. There, in the shadow of the branches, was a quiet promise. That healing isn't loud, it's steady. That starting over isn't weak, it's brave. That sometimes losing everything is exactly what saves you.